Right, so 31 years into our democracy, we continue to highlight the highs and lows of South Africa, of course, as we also look at the month of June, where the plight of the youth is highlighted during Youth Month. We're also looking at the Government of National Unity 1 year later since its formation. This month also shines a spotlight on the adoption of the Freedom Charter by the Congress Alliance. And of course, we also just look at 30 years of Constitutional Court. So as we continue to quantify the impact of this on our democracy, we also try and envision what this means 31 years and beyond. For this conversation, I'm going to be joined by Tokyo Sexwale. Very good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon to you.
It's been an illustrious 31 years, to say the least, if we're going to reflect on that timeline. We are at Liliesleaf today. We can see that also on this day, the adoption of the Freedom Charter happened. I mean, that formed the basis of our Constitution and you know, sort of everything else that's followed as a result in terms of how our courts operate, the resolutions that has been adopted, Parliament as well. How would you weigh in on the state of our country as we're speaking?
Well, the state of the nation is always spoken to by the president in Parliament. But of course, as you indicated, the state of the nation can also be found and located in what happened around June. You said in June, that's when the young people of this country took a stand. At that time, I was in the Soviet Union and we were watching them die without weapons in their hands. But then June is also the month of the Freedom Charter. June is also the month of the announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa of the National Dialogue. And we are right in the middle of that this morning. I had a conversation on the phone this morning with Brigadier Bam because there's this correspondence that I'm going to be sending to her. But there's a link between Liliesleaf as well as the Freedom Charter. Freedom Charter was adopted at a national dialogue, which is a conference of the ANC and many other organizations, the Congress of the People, to discourse, to dialogue, to find out where are we going for the future. So dialogue, this one that has been announced, is not a first. We've been down this road before. For instance, the formation of the ANC itself in 1912 was a national dialogue because the whites were forming the Union of South Africa, exclusive, and we wanted something inclusive. So the ANC was formed 2 years after 1910. The direct link between Liliesleaf in June together with the Freedom Charter is that after the adoption of the Freedom Charter in 1955, the state, by the way, the National Party government was invited to Kliptown. Many people don't know that because it was not exclusive. They were exclusive, running a white republic, and we wanted them to be running something which is quite inclusive. So they invited to today's event, which is the Freedom Charter Day. They refused to come to the dialogue. What they did instead, the following year, they visited all those leaders who had been there. 156 of them in 1956 were arrested, and that was the commencement of the first of its kind, major treason trial. And that led 4 years later to the banning of the ANC, precisely because the Congress movement had adopted at the national dialogue this document, which carried the expression of the will of the people, the national demands on democracy. So the ANC was banned. How does that link to Liliesleaf? When the ANC was banned, because of 1955, they decided there's no other way than to fight. To fight back because it's about our land. We had lost a birthright, the land. So the decision to fight was taken here, Lizer, where you're standing. Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu and others, Rivonia lived here. To fight to implement the decisions of 1955 and also the aspirations of 1912 of the ANC. That is when Mkhonto weSizwe was formed. Mkhonto weSizwe original comes from here. This is the headquarters of Mkhonto weSizwe. So this was an answer to what happened to our leaders and our people in 1956 and the banning of the ANC in 1960. So it's a direct relationship. And this was the place where we decided, let's fight back.
Thank you for taking us down, memory lane, because it's important to know how we got to this juncture, particularly to your point about the national dialogue that's also loading in our 31 years of democracy. How would you weigh in on the intention behind that? What, our leaders are aiming to achieve through it. Many criticisms also coming through about the cost of it, but also that the work has been done. It should just be strengthened. Implementation should then actually happen following all these resolutions and documents that's already enshrined in the Freedom Charter, the Constitution, the National Development Plan, etc.
Well, we have been down this road before. As I said earlier, the national dialogue is not something new. This is National Dialogue 2025. Somebody said at one stage, the DNA of our people also always has contained this element of talking, of dialogue. That's why we go across the world and we say talk, try to solve your problems. But of course, it comes a time when talking doesn't help. That's why Liliesleaf was born, and that's why, in fact, Madiba put it very well. The question of talking was over. But we started talking with the barrel of the gun, because that's how they replied us in Sharpeville, where we're protesting. Our people are protesting against the past falling, blah, 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 as I said, the Freedom Charter. Now, the following must be said about this dialogue. Some people called it a challenge. There's a crisis in the country. There are issues. The country is not where it's supposed to be right now. So much has been done, but so much has not been done. People have been failed. Potholes everywhere. Political potholes, policy potholes, potholes of infrastructure, potholes in the supply of electricity, water supply, potholes everywhere. And of course the rest of infrastructure. We are suffering here. The country should not be where it is. The dialogue has got the duty to ask, not the question of, how far is the future? What will it look like 30 years from now? A program of action. The ANC has always had program of action. A 30-year program of action presupposes that we are building for the youth of today. Okay, in 30 years' time, I may not be alive. So we must be careful how the leadership of this dialogue is composed and what we allow people to say. The biggest question of today for any dialogue is not the 30 years of the program of action. Listen to this. It's about how we got to this point in the first place. How did South Africa end up in this place? Why do we look like this? Why are we losing out? Why is our country looking the way it is looking? Why are people losing confidence? Look at the ANC itself, talking for the ANC. The numbers are coming down. And 40% is not where they're ending. It's frightening what can happen. How did we get here? But the second question also, what type of leadership got us here? I'm careful and I'm being nice. I'm not asking who in the leadership got us here. Because if I ask that question, it will cause more flames than light. We need more light, illumination, and less emotion. Because if I ask that, there'll be lots of finger pointing. Of course we must point fingers. At this time, my interest is not at people, but at things. Point fingers about where things have gone wrong. So how did we get here? What type of leadership got here? How sensitive was this leadership? Insofar as listening to the aspirations of the people, respecting people insofar as differentiating between public money and your private purse. People who are arrogant in office, people who don't listen, people who don't follow policies, because from all the dialogues that this country has had, there's been decisions where they're not being implemented. Decisions of the Constitutional Court, but then the decisions of activities of the Constitution itself, okay, of 1994. So how did it happen that there are so many decisions, so many dialogues, and National Development Plan came as a result of a dialogue itself? Many other sub-dialogues have happened in this country. The question is that we have not implemented things. We take people for granted. Now to say, let's go and have a dialogue with them and so on, of course it's good. It must be supported. We must talk. But we're going there with different minds. We really need answers about what has happened in South Africa, so we don't deceive people. We must ask the question, how did we get here?
I'm tempted to ask whether It's a capacity building issue. We're looking at the age-old debate about liberation movements and the ability to govern, and what we've seen play out in our own country, perhaps in SADC at large, what lessons could be learnt. How do you reflect on that question 31 years later?
You said what lessons have we learned? How do we understand? They say a people who forget the history, where they come from, are bound to commit the mistakes of that history. So we must always, before you say, let's go for lessons. What happened in the past? What is it that was not done that should be done? And who failed to do that? At the end of the day, we come to that. So South Africa is an English country. It's a powerful country within SADC, very influential country across the world. Not so influential because sometimes we think we are more important than we are. We've got problems here before we run over to Russia, Ukraine, all those type of things. And there are issues there. But we have got to take care of what is happening here. Leadership is very, very important to give a clear message about how we use resources of our country, how you don't pilfer, how you don't steal from your own people. Where are the hospitals today? Where are universities today? What has happened to the University of Nelson Mandela used to be? What does it do? There are shootings at Walter Sisulu University. People are killing one another. Where do we stand with the police today? The corruption that is, the generals are being arrested one after the other. And these are people who are supposed to be trusting the most. There are issues coming also into the country. There are stories coming from Congo, from Goma, that will still be told by these soldiers who are coming here. So it's not all honky-dory. The question is about leadership and commitment and respect for people. And always remember that when we are chosen,
you know, June months, we highlight the plight of the youth, and we're looking at the inequalities, triple threats that they continue to face. And you yourself were youth at one point. I mean, I was reading about how you were supposed to also, end up with Solomon Mahlangu at the gallows, and your journey got diverted. You ended up on Robben Island. But you also, looking back in hindsight, get to see the strides that have been taken, but also the challenges. And we're looking at, the voice of the youth. We're looking at how they're incorporated, are they included as well? Are you convinced that it was worth it? Are you convinced that enough is being done to create, a solid foundation for the youth to take that baton that's been handed over? How would you weigh in?
Our youth must be given the chance of good education, not education the way we used to, we come from high schools and went to varsities and so on. The world has changed. Our youth today must be given the chance, like you, to be able to play a role in not just as influencers having platforms and nice dancing. Fine, enjoy your life, be youthful and dance and do all that. But we live in the world of high technologies. Our technicons and our universities must apply that, because our youth must play in a space where they can come of their own, be like the South Korean youth, Malaysian youth from Singapore, youth from China, youth from Russia. Those people are serious, they're far. They're not just dancing every day. Dance, of course, we should do that. TikTok, you can do all those things. But the youth must prepare themselves to be equal citizens in the world side by side with the youth of the other countries. Our task, we who come from the past, is to be seen to be champions of these people. Give them space, give them opportunities, and let them play in very high educational levels, because the education of today is not history and 1 + 1 is 2, that's type of thing. We're in the world of artificial intelligence. If I say to them, what is AI? Many people don't know. What technologies are there? What influences this thing? We have got to create an education system that allows them to know these things, but also to apply them for jobs. And then they can create their own jobs. You can't stand up as a politician. The job opportunities not created to dress up in a tie and a suit and lying to people and deceiving the youth of people.
Thank you for joining us and for being part of this conversation, for weighing in. It's perhaps going to serve as a conversation starter for many more to come. But thank you also for sharing your own stories and reflecting on your life and times. But lest we never forget the plight of the youth of 1976. and, you know, the gains, the hard-fought sacrifices, 31 years into our own democracy. And lest we never forget the sacrifices from individuals like Tokyo Sexwale, Nelson Mandela, Mamweni Madikizela Mandela, and many, many others, of course, that we continue to take that baton on as the struggle continues. We'll leave it there for now.